As many as 309 million people are facing acute levels of food insecurity across the globe. That's at least according to the World Food Programme's 2024 data. South Africa also has its own fair share of problems that contribute to the issue. In fact, the country faces challenges ranging from high unemployment and poverty to the rising cost of living. The cost of food is a particularly sensitive issue, considering recent reports of poisoned food in some areas. Now, as the international community observes this World Food Day, let's find out what role grassroots interventions can play in averting hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition. For that, let's welcome our guest. Gershon Naidoo is the Marketing Director of Meals on Wheels Community Service South Africa and joins us now via our video link. Gershon, it's great to see you. Thanks very much indeed for making time to speak to us. Perhaps let's just begin by getting a better understanding of the situation in our own country. You know, I typically find that if you yourself are not food insecure, you typically have a very warped idea about how big the problem is.
Yes, statistics are scary in South Africa at the moment. We're talking about 1 in 3 people that don't have access to a plate of food, a simple thing like food. When we think about all the food that is around us and to think that there are people that are going to bed starving tonight, it is really, really a scary thing.
Yeah, and what do we find is typically at the heart of this? Because what I've heard in the past is that, in fact, enough food is being produced, but it seems our distributions aren't the way they should be.
Oh, that is a very, very loaded question. Again, statistics says that there are 10, the food that is being wasted will fill 10 soccer pitches. That is the amount of food that is actually being wasted in South Africa. Wow. There's so many contributing factors to why people are not getting food. And of course, we know that unemployment is one of them. Unemployment on the one side being one of them, but access to jobs. There's just so many things we can talk about. That's why I said your question is very loaded.
No, fair enough. Perhaps let me just try zone in on one of the aspects for one. Who typically are the contributors to this wastage? Because, you know, perhaps that's a good place to start as we try better understand whether or not they are best placed to make sure the food goes to those who need it.
Yeah, I think the challenges that we're having as a non-profit organization at Meals on Wheels is regulations regulations and legislation that prohibit the distribution of food. So, for example, food that is served in a buffet at a hotel cannot be given away or distributed. It has to be thrown away. And we are really struggling to get into this. We're seeing a lot of our mainstream supermarkets now allowing non-profit organizations to come in and use what we call the best before food. You know, the food that is just about to expire that allows us to cook and prepare the food. But I think the wastage of food also belongs with each one of us as individuals in South Africa. If we look at what food is left over after a meal, 9 out of 10 times we take that and throw it away, whereas we could package it, drop it off at a non-profit organization, or even carry it in our cars, and that person that knocks on our window at every robot or traffic light, we can give that, and that will already start making a difference in the plight of the hungry that we have in South Africa.
Yeah, fair enough. The information I have at my disposal says that you've been able to establish over 100-odd community kitchens. Perhaps you can let us in on what it's taken to get those going.
Yes. Lots of hard work, dedication, and a huge amount of volunteerism. We have now currently in all 181 kitchens that serving the communities that they are situated in, and some of them driving as far as 30 kilometers from their kitchen to distribute those meals. I think I would be failing if I don't say thank you to the many, many corporates, the many individual donors, the many volunteers and our staff that man these kitchens, making it possible for us to feed approximately 200,000 people every single day. And, you know, I'll just give you one example. At one of our branches, every single morning, there's a line at 6 o'clock that all the homeless people are being fed. And at first, the local businesses started, you know, saying you're attracting all these homeless people to your kitchen. You know, it doesn't look very nice. But after 2 or 3 months, they came to thank us because those homeless are not now worrying their customers and actually are now supporting that program. So this is what we need to see more of and what we need to do more of. Take care of those around us.
Yeah, you know, we sometimes just restrict this conversation to people having something in their belly, but my goodness, the impact is so much further reaching than that, for lack of a better term. You know, if people, specifically children, are well fed, they're able to focus hopefully in class, goodness me, hopefully they're able to contribute to society, and ultimately everybody wins. So this is not just about, you know, meals in people's plates, which is of course an important aspect of it, but if you think about it in the long term, the country ultimately benefits.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, we had a meeting with one of our donors, and they said they did research, and they noticed that there's a lot less social unrest where there is a kitchen, a Meals on Wheels kitchen.
Wow.
And, you know, we didn't even realize that just feeding people is contributing so much to the peacefulness of our country. And also, you know, we want to go a step further, and we even now training our beneficiaries to prepare their own meals with the different projects that we have within Meals on Wheels.
Yeah. I want to just go back to something you've mentioned, which I think might have piqued the interest of many people listening. This idea around regulation sometimes making it difficult to ensure we reduce our wastage. Do you have in mind a solution to something like that? I mean, because I understand part of the reason why, for example, food from a buffet can't just be shared is that sometimes it may actually cause a health risk, right? And we've seen enough of those kind of stories in our country. So where's that sweet spot between ensuring there isn't a wastage and, of course, protecting the people who need the food?
Yeah, maybe my thinking is a bit too simplistic, but, you know, we deliver cooked food every day. That's part of our job. And there is a cycle that we need to follow, a very strict cycle that we need to follow to make sure that the food is preserved correctly, the temperatures are correct before it is being served. Just the number of night shelters we have, and it's not going to take a lot of time for the food to reach those buffets, from the buffets to the night shelters. It's simple things like that that legislation can put in place. You know, how to transport the food, the amount of time it takes for the food to reach the buffet table, to the meals, to the beneficiaries. I think that sometimes we are more concerned about, you know, what possible risks, and then people are going hungry, instead of us putting processes in place to manage the risk. I don't know if I'm making sense to you.
No, absolutely. Like I said, there must be a sweet spot in between somewhere that will benefit everyone in one way or the other. I see there's a lot of focus being placed on not just giving people food, but making sure that that food is nutritious. How much of a challenge is that for you and your organization?
We are very strict on what constitutes a plate of food in our organization. And I think the biggest challenge for us is access to that food, even for us as a big organization. We like to make sure that there's protein and all the necessary ingredients on a plate of food. It is really, really difficult, but I must say, you know, being 60 years old, I think we found the sweet spot. And, you know, we thank God that the food that we serve is really, really nutritious, just by the fact that when our vehicles come, there are long lines and big smiles.
Yeah.
And you know, really, that is how the success of your organization is measured, by the smiles and the appreciation you get from the beneficiaries. The food smells good, it looks good, and is absolutely tasty.
Yeah, I can see the smile on your own face suggesting that this really means something. And, you know, I suppose it's a good way as we close off our discussion to try and personalize this discussion if we can. You know, when we typically speak to, I don't know, volunteers from Gift of the Givers, you'll find that the reason for the work they do is personal. You know, there's usually an anecdote or something like that that's put them in a position where they carry out what I reckon to be vocational work. You know, something tells me you're not necessarily making the most money, but nonetheless you're there and hoping to make a difference. So perhaps if people are wondering if they should think of being volunteers, you can share to us your why as you continue to contribute to the organization.
Yeah, I started many years ago, 34 years ago, as a volunteer for Meals on Wheels. And, it was just a stopgap for me in my life until I found what I really wanted to do. And 34 years later, I'm still at Meals on Wheels. I think the joy we get when we make a difference in one person's life, when we can just put a smile on one person's face and going to bed at night knowing that one person has a full tummy or is experiencing life or has their dignity restored to them. I think that's what makes the difference. It's not about the money, it's not about the titles, it's just about the ability to make a difference in somebody's life. I think that's what drives all of us at Meals on Wheels, whether it's our volunteers, whether it's our full-time staff. It's just that ability to change a person's life with a simple thing like a plate of food.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we've spoken, that plate of food, of course, can go a really long way. Gershon Naidoo, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. We appreciate your time and wish you all the very best as you continue with the important work that you're doing.